Fight fan, was good? Welcome back to the Mike Check Podcast. This is T Word, the People's Champ. Thanks for tapping in. Today we're talking about Gervonta Tank Davis and King Ryan Garcia in their recent fight on April 22nd, which apparently has been a pay-per-view smash. Before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We do appreciate your feedback. Okay, so Gervonta Tank Davis and King Ryan Garcia entered the ring on Saturday night, April 22nd, for a very much anticipated matchup. This thing has been brewing for several years, culminating in a definite fight date over the last couple of months, and they finally got in the ring to tangle. And the build-up, the marketing, everything was picture perfect for these two particular fighters, because you're talking about two gentlemen who have very significant social media following, as well as a very intense casual following. A lot of people are aware of these guys, even if they don't know exactly what they can do in the ring. I mean, if you ask the average fan before the fight, not a boxing fan, but just average sports fan, what does Tank Davis do well? They would talk about the knockouts. If you talk about Ryan Garcia, they would talk about the left hook. So essentially, you're looking at two guys who had a very limited recognition for what their actual skills were in the ring. Some people would talk about Ryan's speed, but for Tank, it was pretty much he will knock you out. That's pretty much all you heard. What you actually got to see on display was Gervonta Davis using ring IQ and a very specific game plan to beat Ryan Garcia. And we talked about it in the previous video, so we won't get into it today. Now, what we are going to talk about, though, is the pay-per-view numbers, which, from my understanding, have varied anywhere from about 1 million as a baseline up to about 1.5 million. Now, for me, that number is going to settle around 1 million until I get some official word from maybe seeing something from Showtime. But we do have an official announcement from DAZN, which is the third party that was able to allow purchases of the fight. You had pay-per-view.com, PPV.com, you had DAZN, and then you also had Showtime. PPV.com and Showtime had the fight for $84.99, and DAZN provided it for $60. Later in this video, we're going to get into some details of that. Now, DAZN has reported through Ade Aladipo, one of their hosts of one of their shows on DAZN, 450,000 buys through DAZN. Now, if I'm understanding this number correctly, it has nothing to do with the issue that they had of some people being double, triple, and quadruple charged. This is the actual numbers, the single charges, 450,000. So to get to 1 million, Showtime and PPV.com needed to reach roughly 550,000, which I think is very reasonable. Showtime has shown that they can handle that type of load. They've been able to do that. Canelo's fight with Caleb Plant actually reached 800,000 on Showtime's platform. So they've shown the ability to manage that, and they were streaming it out in 1080p or 4K or whatever you had, the best you could get it. So people were treated to an impressive display in terms of the aesthetics, and then the undercard was underwhelming, but this was what people signed up for. They signed up for Ryan and Tank. And I believe that the people involved in making this fight were so sure that they could bring in everybody. They even started the card an hour early. And that's when you know they kind of hit every single mark almost picture perfectly. When you think about that, they basically said, hey, we're going to start an hour early so nobody can say, well, I'm not getting it because the fight's going to come on too late. They eliminated all the excuses. The only excuse that they allowed was for people to say, well, $85 is too much. But if you want to see one of the best fighters in the world, which is Gervonta Davis, and one of the most exciting young talents in the world, which is Ryan Garcia, you're going to pay that $85, because it's looking like there's not going to be any other good money-worthy pay-per-views for the rest of the year for the casual fan as of right now. You've got Canelo and Ryder coming up in May, but that's not a casual fight. This is for diehard Canelo fans. So they felt like they had the perfect opportunity to reach into fight goers and fight lovers' pockets and casual fans' pockets and get that money. And it spit out some significant numbers. Now, if you look on Twitter, you'll see Rick Glaser, who is known as a PBC hater, has actually put out a number of 600 to 750K was the early indicators through his sources. And I believe he's well connected. And I think that sometimes he tapers down the numbers to suit his own agenda, but he's aware of the actual facts. That being said, Rick Glaser put out those numbers, and he doubled down on Tuesday or Wednesday, stating 600K was what the tracking number was as of Friday, meaning based on pre-sales, they were going to do at least 600K. He even conceded to about 800,000. So in Rick language, converted to layman's terms, that's going to be at least $1 million. So that's how I got my baseline. The 1.2 sounds very reasonable, but now that means that Showtime is suddenly looking at 750 to 800,000. And if you're trying to get to 1.4 or 1.5 million, which is very possible with these two fighters, that puts $1 million on the Showtime platform. So I'm not sure that that's the actual number, but if it is, that actually elevates this fight into top 10 territory in boxing history. And the only person who appears in the top 10 multiple times pretty much is Floyd Mayweather. So that tells you, if this fight has stepped into that range of sales, they're in rarefied air. And this bodes really well for Gervonta Davis being the face of boxing over the next several years, until somebody else comes up that can surpass him, that can bring the excitement and the atmosphere and the spectacle that he brings. For Ryan Garcia, I think as a trickle-down effect, he's going to also see some really good pay-per-view sales, especially in a great comeback fight. Everybody loves an underdog. His next fight, if he picks a pretty good opponent, he's going to have a good opportunity to sell maybe 400,000 to $500,000, because now he's been a headliner on the platform. Now, before we close, we want to talk about the issue with DAZN. So my understanding is that DAZN has been issuing refunds over the last couple of days because people were trying to purchase and view the fight on Saturday, and it had some issues actually getting into the platform. And number one, buying the fight the day of. So it sounds like their servers were overwhelmed with processing payments. And that can happen when you're not used to, when your payment system is not used to processing charges in so many different ways, you know what I mean? So I could see where that would create an issue, and it sounds like that's what DAZN experienced. In addition, people who did get through purchasing the fight were actually not able to access the fight until later into the broadcast. Some of them missed significant parts of the undercard that were broadcast, so that proved to be an issue. And there were a lot of complaints on Twitter and different social media platforms about it. It sounds like DAZN is slowly addressing the issue, but if they were able to actually sell 450,000, who knows how many were lost and ended up over at Showtime, and people ended up spending that extra $25. Nonetheless, it sounds like all of us Americans dug deep in our pockets, and even though we paid for Caleb Plant and David Benavidez in March, on March 25th, we turned right around about 30 days later and paid $10 more for Gervonta Davis and King Ryan Garcia. And I think that this bodes well for the future of pay-per-view, meaning if we could get marquee fighters in the ring to go toe-to-toe, it shows that the boxing public and fans are going to support those entities and dig into our pockets and provide that money so we can get those fighters to fight. Something very interesting to note, the break-even mark, if you have two marquee fighters with $5 million guarantees, is $150,000. So Showtime was able, in the first probably day that you were able to purchase the pay-per-view, Showtime was able to pay both these fighters their guarantees, and now they're going to split 90% of the pay-per-view proceeds between the two fighters. So that's really great to hear that these two young men under 30 are looking at mega millions. We're talking about $100 million fight. That's a big freaking deal, and I'm just happy to see it for boxing. Boxing won, the business of boxing won as well. So happy to see that things are moving in the right direction, and we need to see more marquee fighters go toe-to-toe. So in another video, we're going to talk about who Gervonta Davis might be looking at next. But for this one, we're going to close it right there. So this has been T. We appreciate your fight, fam. Until the next time I holla. Peace.